To say that there is strong demand for higher education in India is to make a massive understatement. Manipal Global Education has built itself around this demand and even gone global. The chairman of the company, Mohandas, joins me now at the INSEAD India Business Dialogue in Mumbai. Mohandas, thanks for joining us on INSEAD Knowledge. Since the founding of Manipal Global Education, how would you characterize its growth?
Well, I think we've grown at about 20% CAGR over the last 10 years with multiple acquisitions. We are an education service provider which provides corporate education in India. We provide assessment services in India, and we provide the technology for online education. Outside India, we run for-profit universities in Malaysia, in Dubai, in Nepal, and in Antigua. Globally, we produce about 1,000 doctors a year through the for-profit route. In Antigua for the United States, in Nepal for Nepal and other countries, and in Malaysia for the Malaysian and other places. So I think it's been heady growth, but we are constrained by the fact that India doesn't recognize for-profit education in India. Somehow the government seems to have a hang up about socialism, forgetting that what matters ultimately is the quality of the delivery and the outcome rather than the route that you decide to take for education.
Given that you say the government doesn't recognize for-profit education in India, what sort of challenges are you running into?
Well, India has got a very large educational infrastructure, 675 universities, 45,000 colleges, but only 21% of the people, young people in the age group of 18 to 24 in college. So we have a challenge of access, we have a challenge of equity, we have a challenge of quality. The access challenge is going to go away because the system is expanding, and many politicians have got into the fray by setting up their own colleges and universities. And of course, they do all kind of stuff. Many people do all kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, they deliver a service and people have a choice. In terms of equity, a large number of India's young people are poor, and the government should step in to give scholarships. There is free education in the government sector, which is just about 30% of higher education. And what is expanding now is the private sector, which charges fees. So government has to come out with a scholarship or a free ship scheme. And three is about the quality. Because of the large scale expansion, we have got teaching universities. We don't have research-led teaching universities.
And what would you say to the government to increase access to education and enrollment?
Well, we're working with government to tell them very clearly the most important thing is to focus on the students. The students have the freedom to go to an institution of their choice, to take a course of their choice. The students have the means to go to such an institution. Whether the institution is in the public sector, private sector, for-profit, not-for-profit should not matter. So long as these two parameters are looked at by the government, in the sense that you allow a variety of institutions to come up easily, freely. They have a variety of courses which are accredited to a certain standard that meet a minimum standard mark, and students are empowered through scholarships or their own money to go to any institution of their choice. You've done good by the system. So don't try to regulate institutions in such a manner that only corrupt practices can enable you to set up institutions. Because when you create a shortage, corruption comes in. And don't try to impose quality standards sitting in Delhi, which cannot be done by many people because they have to adjust to local circumstances. Allow students the choice by expanding capacity and be empowering the student. If you do these two things, you would have achieved the aims that you set for yourself. If you try to tell the government to be liberal, they listen, they understand the logic, but there's a very large left in this country, and it's difficult to win the public debate because there's a lot of noise about lack of empowerment, there's a lot of noise about poor people not having empathy, and nobody wants to face the question head on. So I think it'll take time, but certainly there's an improvement.
So how should the government be funding students? Is it through scholarships and vouchers perhaps?
In my view, the government should have a regulatory mechanism which allows free entry of anybody who wants to set up education institution based upon certain criteria. They need to get accredited within 4 or 5 years, so you have an independent accreditation body. To take care of social equity, government should have a large scholarship program where students are funded by the government to go to these education institutions and pay the fees to get education of their choice. So I think these are the three big things the government ought to do. And I don't think the government should run multiple educational institutions, because the quality of the government institutions, whether the state or the union government, has deteriorated over the last 50 years. They're just not coming up to the mark because they're very rigid. The fact that government funds puts them under constraints of the budget, puts them under the control of bureaucrats, and brings them under the government regime, which is very constrictive and which is made more for control rather than for a liberal institution like a university.
How do you hope to grow your offerings both locally and internationally?
Well, locally we are expanding in the corporate education business, and I think we see good growth. We should grow at 30-40% a year for the next 3 years. We are expanding the assessment work, which is good, we're seeing good growth, and we are expanding in providing technology services. We don't plan to set up any educational institutions through a corporate organization, but we're setting up 5 universities through our trust on a not-for-profit basis. One university has already come up in Jaipur, another one is coming up in Bangalore. The idea is to create a university system consisting of these 5 new universities and 2 existing universities, like the University of California system all across India. Hopefully, we should have 100,000 young people getting educated in the not-for-profit sector through these 7 universities in maybe 10 years' time.
And how are you working in the non-profit sector? Is this in partnership with the government?
Well, we work in partnership with government because in India you need a legislation to start a university, a government approval. So government has a big hand. The government gives you some land at cheap rates for education, and we have to invest. So we put in money through our trusts, which have a small surplus, hopefully, and otherwise we raise money through donations from well-meaning individuals and start this university. So government is a big player, but the government believes us because we are credible, we have a track record of 60 years, and we've done a good job.
And in corporate education, what are these companies coming to you for? What are they after?
In the corporate education field, the corporates come to us to make sure that the employees they hire get the skills and the capability required to hit the ground running from day one. Very often we found that there is a gap between what corporates want in terms of people's capability and what people bring to the table. That's because the education system is not tuned to the corporate sector. Education believes that it is creating a whole human being, whereas corporates want fully trained people. There will always be a gap, but the gap is very wide in India for various reasons, because the interactions are very less. Maybe in the United States the gap is very much less because there's greater sense of interaction between industry and academics. But India is very wide. So we are setting up a training school where corporates hire people and we train them. For example, when I was with Infosys, we set up the world's largest corporate university. We put in $500 million and we used to produce 30,000 software engineers a year. We hired them and we trained them in technology. They could come from any field of engineering and we trained them, and our Mysore campus is the 3rd largest center for software engineers compared to any country in the world. Only United States and China produce more software engineers than our Mysore center in Infosys. Now we set up a corporate center in Bangalore for training bankers for many banks, which are public sector and private sector banks. They hire these people, put them through a course, and we train them, and when they go back, I think they hit the ground running.
And training is also expanding in microfinance.
Yeah, we are starting a microfinance program with a microfinance institution in Bangalore, and that's working fairly well. So I think multiple programs all across the field.
Mohandas, thanks a lot for joining us on INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you very much.